All right. What's happening, everybody? Welcome in. Welcome to another week of the NFL season. We've got week 12 upon us. Hopefully, week 11 was favorable to you. Hands up if you started Taysom Hill. Hopefully, we got those wins with the fantasy playoffs fast approaching, and in all likelihood, trade deadlines are coming up. Trade deadlines are coming up shortly in your league. In all likelihood, if they haven't already passed, the trade deadline in all of my leagues, and whether they are leagues that I commission or not, are the trade deadline is all this week. So that might be the case for everybody else. So if you have the trade deadline coming up, we can cover that today. As always, we'll go over a high level of waiver wire options that may be available in your league. And then, of course, your questions. Just as an FYI, everybody, I mentioned this last week, but just as a reminder, and I'll send a community post out after this stream as well. This is likely going to be my only stream this week. I got family coming into town, and I don't see them too often, so I'm probably not going to be available throughout the rest of the week, at least as far as the live streams. But you can still ask questions in the form of comments on any videos or streams on the channel. You can hit me in Discord if you are a part of my Discord. If you are already in there, great. If you're not, evergreen invite, second link in the description of this stream and all the videos and streams on the channel. My availability might be touch and go, hit and miss, all that good stuff. But it will be around here and there for any questions anybody may have. I'll try to get to them as quickly and promptly as I can. And then I'll be back in full force, full swing for the week of Thanksgiving. Just as an FYI. So, as always, start-sit questions today are difficult ones to answer. I will try to be a little bit more understanding of them today, again, considering that I am not likely to be available for the typical Thursday, Saturday streams that I run. But, as always, take any recommendations for start-sit today with a grain of salt without any injury updates or practice reports to go off of. So I'll throw that up as a banner really quickly, just as an FYI. What's going on, Greg? Good to see you. What did Hawkinson do this week? Was it a whole lot of nothing? I admittedly don't even know. But the Houston defense did quite well last night. Yeah, start any defense against the Cowboys. I believe Washington gets them this week, and I would imagine they are widely available. And they're playing pretty well, have been probably since about week 4 or 5. Washington's defense has turned a corner. They started off the year, first couple weeks of the season, absolutely dreadful, but they've really turned things around. Obviously, the direction, morale of the team, all that good stuff has clearly turned a corner with the play of the offense, more specifically Jaden Daniels. So I think that's given a boost to the defense. They're playing well. They get Dallas this week. Go ahead and drop some fob on them if you don't have, one of the typical obvious plays on defense, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Kansas City, Buffalo. Buffalo's on bye. So if you were relying on the Bills, might be a good time to take a look and see if you can get Washington for this week. Hawkinson, 2 catches, 13 yards. That's no good. I'm telling you, man, I was worried about Hawkinson this year, and he still could turn a corner. It's so dicey banking or betting on a player coming off of a serious injury. It's typically, I want to wait a year after. Like Hawkinson, I will be hammering Hawkinson in 2025 drafts when I know that he's healthy. Same story goes for like a Nick Chubb, who I feel like has been, lackluster since he came back. But, there's still plenty of season left. these guys could continue to ramp up. Yeah, high watermark for Nick Chubb so far this year was actually the first game he played. He was the RB25 because he fell into the end zone. Still only turned 11 carries into 22 yards. Yeah, I don't know that you're necessarily able to rely on Nick Chubb this year or TJ Hawkinson. Just injured players coming into a season, coming off of a serious injury. Return to play does not mean return to form. That is a tried and true, it's mostly tried and true anyway, formula. Like with, excellent, young, incredible athletes being the exception to the norm, like a 22, 23-year-old player. Breece Hall comes to mind last year. So, but next year we'll be in on. I don't know if I'll be in on Chubb next year. But now we're talking about a 29-year-old running back coming off a serious injury on what could be a really bad offense unless he moves on in some way. Hawkinson I'll be in on next year. That's for sure. Let's see. And we have Mageddon this week, just as an FYI. I think we have like 6 different teams. Atlanta, Buffalo, the Jaguars, the Bengals, the Jets, and the Saints. Lots of teams on bye this week, so we are working through Bye-pocalypse, Mageddon, whatever you want to call it. So if you are navigating a lot of bye weeks, let me know what your situation is as far as who you might be picking up and who you may have to sacrifice to the 2 waivers in order to field a lineup full of players starting this week, or at least playing this week. So I will get into some top options on waivers very quickly, just a broad overview that probably impacts a lot of leagues. In some cases, it'll be all leagues. In other cases, it'll be some leagues as far as players that might be available. Just we'll take a look at a buy position breakdown of, favorites, trendy options to potentially add or pick up based on who in all likelihood is still available in your league, with the benchmark typically being players that are under 50% rostered. And there's a couple members in here. I see, again, I see Greg. What's going on? I see Arturo. What's going on, Arturo? I believe you might be a beneficiary of one of He Hate Me's very generous donations. So congrats and, welcome being a member of the channel. You will get priority responses to questions now. That is a perk of being a member. So let me get into overarching waiver wire. This should only take 5-10 minutes tops. And then I'll get into everybody's questions. At quarterback, the top target, of course. Go figure, I guess, is maybe a better answer or response to that. Is if Anthony Richardson is still available, he's worth grabbing. Very similar to what happened in Carolina with Bryce Young. The Colts benched their young starter for a veteran for a couple of weeks. Whether it was planned or by design that he would only sit for a couple weeks is another story. The original plan was that Joe Flacco might play the rest of the season or start the rest of the season for Indianapolis. That experiment lasted only a few weeks before the team ultimately decided to go back to Anthony Richardson. Obviously, his floor remains incredibly low. We're talking about a very raw, inexperienced talent who just simply hasn't played a lot of games yet up to this point in his career, and that includes his collegiate experience. So the floor remains low. But if this was a corner-turning moment for Anthony Richardson, then we already know that his ceiling is sky high for fantasy purposes. 29 fantasy points this past week in in default scoring when it comes to quarterbacks. 270 passing yards and a touchdown. Picked up 2 more scores on the ground. He is averaging about 30 rushing yards per game. That number figures to tick up or trend up as he continues to get more playing time and more experience. That will continue over this next stretch. They do have the Colts a late bye. I believe they're one of the teams with a week 14 bye. So you are dealing with that potential headache. If you have a need at quarterback and you are able to end up with Richardson after waivers clear, that's great for the next 2 weeks. Obviously, we have to make a plan for week 14 and potentially week 15, which is the first round of the fantasy playoffs in a tough matchup on the road against Denver. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. He has good matchups this week and next against Detroit and New England. Detroit obviously is a wagon, and their front seven is excellent, but you can beat them through the air, mostly because teams have to play them from behind because the Lions are killing everybody these days. So there's a lot of passing volume that comes with that. So Richardson should be fine. If you need a quarterback, again, the team's on bye this week, the Bengals, so you don't have Joe Burrow. The the Bills, you don't have Josh Allen. The Jets, you don't have Aaron Rodgers in Superflex formats. The Falcons, you don't have Kirk Cousins in Superflex formats. The Saints and the Jaguars really don't factor into that conversation between Derek Carr and Mac Jones. But, if you had Trevor Lawrence, I guess more particularly in Superflex leagues, you can't rely on any of those guys this week. So if Anthony Richardson is available in one quarterback leagues, he's not available in Superflex formats. But if he's available in one quarterback leagues and you have Allen or Burrow, he's worth a grab. He's worth a look. Bo Nix is also on that radar. Dude is making a late push for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jaden Daniels may already have it wrapped up, but Bo Nix is making this a conversation. You figure he's going to continue to produce because he just looks good. Killed the Falcons, 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. Gets the Raiders this week, gets the Browns the week 13. Denver is another team with a week 14 bye. So these are quarterback options that if you do end up going with them, you're going to need another plan down the road in the near future. If you have Allen or Burrow and you grab one of these guys, then you're good. But if you grab one of these dudes without another rock-solid option to pivot to or turn to within a couple of weeks, then obviously we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. But both are available in over 50% of leagues, so there's a good chance if you play in a one-quarterback league, more particularly in 10 or 12-team leagues, that Richardson and or Nix are available. You can go ahead and throw a bid in. If you've got somebody like Burrow or Allen, I'll spend 6 or 7% of my FOB. I'm not gonna go nuts just because I already have a bona fide starter that I can pivot back to after just a 1-week hiatus after the bye week. But if you need a quarterback this week, Richardson or Nix are the clear-cut options moving forward. But there has been some rock-solid quarterback play recently for fantasy purposes that you could rely on. Matthew Stafford might be available. Drake May might be available. It just depends on the available options in your league. At running back, there's not a lot of obvious guys that jump off of the page. I would say, especially for those who have James Conner, who I love for his fantasy playoff schedule. The Cardinals just had their bye week this past week, so you can fire up all of your Cardinals for the rest of the season into your starting lineup without any issue. James Conner has a spectacular playoff schedule, especially if you have James Conner. I would be prioritizing Trey Benson on the waiver wire this week. And if he's on a roster already, and your trade deadline has not passed, again, in all of my leagues, whether I commission them or not, my trade deadline is this week. I would think that might be the case for a lot of you, that the trade deadline is this week, week 12. If you have James Conner, the waivers are kind of thin at running back this week. I would be looking to do whatever I can to get Trey Benson on my bench, as long as you're in a position to shore up your roster for the fantasy playoffs. If you are in a win now mode and you need that roster spots for somebody who's a little bit more, could potentially start for you, because Benson is more of a stash and a handcuff, not necessarily a guy that you could fire up into your starting lineup this week. But if you have James Conner, or you're just looking to shape up your roster and get yourself ready for the fantasy playoffs, and you are in position to do so, Trey Benson is the target if he is available. And there's a chance he is. Again, there's a good chance he is, because the Cardinals just had their bye week. So there was a good chance he was bye week fodder for anybody who needed a pickup for somebody who needed an active player this past week. I mean, Roschon Johnson scored a touchdown against the Packers this past week. He's got a tough matchup against the Vikings this week. His schedule rest of season overall is not a desirable one, but he is in all likelihood out there if you're desperate for running back depth. It's just the rest of the schedule does not look good. Minnesota, twice this weekend, week 15. That's the first week of the fantasy playoffs. Detroit twice, week 13 and week 16 being the fantasy semifinals. San Francisco, week 14 is not a bad matchup by the numbers, but it is a mismatch from a talent perspective. The 49ers are a much better team than the Bears, so I don't expect the Bears to have a ton of success just because the matchup looks good. Week 17 at home against Seattle is your best bet, but we're too far off from championship week to be speculating who could be streamable options. So Roschon is not a must target for me, even though he is widely available in 10, 12, probably even 14 team leagues just because he scored a touchdown this past week. Honestly, that might be it. I mean, Cam Akers got a touchdown. He remains a backup to Aaron Jones. He only averaged 2.5 yards per carry. Like, he's not putting up incredibly impressive numbers. His upcoming schedule is not bad at all. Chicago twice, Arizona, Atlanta, weeks 14 and 15, Arizona, Atlanta, Chicago, weeks 13, 14, 15, all at home. Certainly nothing scary there. It's just how many opportunities is he going to get behind Aaron Jones? If you have Aaron Jones, Cam Akers is a priority add if he's available. But outside of that, he's going to be difficult to trust. There's not a whole lot going on at the running back position otherwise this week for waiver wire purposes. Wide receiver, there's a few options. And, of course, at tight end, there's a few options. Christian Watson, Quentin Johnston, the Browns wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. And, I mean, I wasn't chasing Marquez Valdes-Scantling's performance from week 10, but I guess I should have because he caught another bomb for a touchdown this past week. And I guess we need to respect the fact that he's going to have a chance to make that play once or twice a game, every game for the rest of the season. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a starter for them moving forward. Obviously, Rashid Shaheed is not coming back for New Orleans. There's a decent chance Chris Olave's season is over. They are going nowhere fast, and he suffered his 5th documented concussion. Can only imagine how many undocumented concussions he has. So what are the Saints? For what purpose do they have to run Chris Olave back out there in a lost season? If he were fully healthy, then I would assume he would be out there, even though they're not really, they're just playing out the strain at this point, New Orleans is. But he's not. Multiple bad concussions. This, the most recent one landing him on injured reserve. He'll miss at least 2 more games. MVS, you probably don't have to even put that much money, put that much FOB bucks on him. Well, maybe now that he's had back-to-back weeks with a bomb for a score. But if you're looking for wide receiver depth, deep dart throws, you could do worse than MVS. And I'll repeat the names that I mentioned. Quentin Johnston, similar spot. He is a big play waiting to happen. The difference between him and MVS is he's going to get much better quarterback play week to week, catching the ball from Justin Herbert. So QJ has taken a big step forward this year and emerging as a downfield threat for LA. You could do worse than him. Christian Watson, he is volatile. I feel like he kind of alternates weeks with Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks as far as who steps up and who is the guy that the Packers receiver worth starting. So they're impossible to trust. I feel like that's kind of the Packers receivers are musical chairs rest of the season, maybe with the exception of Jaden Reed, who I still very much like. Caught a touchdown this past week, but only on 2 catches. So even he's a little difficult to trust, even though I do think he is the top target week to week for them. Everything else is kind of 1 week at a time for the Packers receivers. But picked up 3 catches, turned it into 90 yards. Watson is a big play opportunity waiting to happen. So, all of these guys are viable. Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. I mean, all of the Browns wide receivers are viable as long as Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback. There have been whispers and potential concerns that the Browns may see what they have in Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a lost season, and they move off of Jameis to see what they have in the second-year quarterback. If that comes to fruition, obviously the Browns receivers are much less enticing, but as long as Jameis is in there, all of the Browns wide receivers are viable. So if you need some wide receiver depth, you could grab any one of them. Jeudy, Elijah Moore. Tillman is already on rosters, but Jeudy and Elijah Moore are still pretty widely available. You can take a flyer on either one of them. They are probably difficult guys to trust on Thursday night on a short week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But for the rest of the season, even though by the numbers the matchups aren't great, Jameis is chucking it. He's throwing it downfield. The yards per attempt for Jameis remain high. They always are. So he pushes the ball downfield. Wide receivers have a chance to make big plays with him on a per play basis. They're worth a roll of the dice. And then at tight end, again, shout out if you played Taysom Hill. All he did was drop 40 fantasy points this past week. If you have Taysom Hill, you might as well rock with him moving forward, to be completely honest. He's getting that. He's in that Swiss Army knife role. He's doing literally what I, expected he might do going into the week last week. He'll play quarterback. He'll play running back. He'll play wide receiver. He'll play tight end. He's doing everything other than selling hot dogs in the stands. So you might as well move forward with Taysom Hill as your starting tight end if you don't have a clear-cut, Kelsey, Bowers, Kittle to turn to. Jonnu Smith, Will Dissly. I was wrong about Will Dissly, caught the touchdown, and, I was like, I was thinking he might split some opportunities with Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst turned out to be a, inactive coach's decision. So Will Dissly, you could comfortably move forward with as a streaming option at tight end if you need it. 4 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. He did better than the credit that I gave him last week, so I'll take the L on that one. Will Dissly can absolutely be picked up, probably for cheap if you're looking for streaming options at tight end. The other guy I like at tight end, I've been mentioning his name a few times here over the past couple of weeks. The Panthers were just on a bye this past week, so of course he wasn't viable last week, but he might be for the next at least couple weeks, and it could turn into more of a rest of season type of thing if he continues to emerge. Jatavian Sanders has a spectacular matchup this week against the Kansas City Chiefs, and it is a mismatch on paper from a talent perspective. Obviously, the Chiefs are the best team or one of the best teams in the NFL, and the Panthers are one of the worst. But the Chiefs give up a lot of fantasy production to opposing tight ends. Jatavian Sanders is coming off a very productive stretch going into the Panthers bye week, and you figure he's going to continue to see increased opportunities, even with Adam Thielen returning to the lineup. Carolina's embracing their youth movement. They moved off of Deontay Johnson. They moved off of Jonathan Mingo. They are freeing up opportunities for the rest of the guys that they have on their roster that they added in the draft this year. That's Xavier Leggett. That is Jalen Coker. And, that's Jatavian Sanders as well, who in a bad matchup by the numbers against the Giants in Munich week 10 caught a touchdown. I feel like you could do worse than Jatavian Sanders. He's going to probably fly under the radar this week. You probably only have to spend $1 or $2 to get him if you are, again, if you're dealing with bye weeks, if you have Kyle Pitts for the Falcons, if you have Dalton Kincaid for the Bills, if you have, again, the Saints are on bye this week. So if you have Taysom Hill, if you have Evan Ingram for the Jaguars, if you were relying on Mike Gesicki for the Bengals, Jatavian Sanders, worth a look. Worth a look for me. I think that does it as far as like a very high level overview of potential waiver wire options. So of course, if you have, specifics that pertain to your situation, I of course will sort that out. We'll take a look, but I always try to give an overarching look at waivers from a bird's eye view. It might help answer a question or two organically. But now that we are through my spiel, I will get to individual questions. As always, for those just joining, maybe you've been here before, maybe you're new. Either way, welcome in. I will be getting to member questions first. That is a perk of being a member of the channel, one of them anyway. Member questions and comments will be responded to in priority order. If you are feeling generous enough to send a super, you don't have to, but that would also be a line jumper to get your question answered in priority order or faster. and then I will get to everybody else. So I just ask for some patience as I work through members and supers. Again, it is Tuesday. Start sit questions will be deprioritized. We just don't have enough information yet as far as injury updates, practice reports, all that good stuff. I will not be available in all likelihood for live streams for the rest of this week. I will be hosting family from out of town, so my time of on here will be limited this week. But I will try to get to any questions over the course of the week. If you have them, start, sit, whatever have you. Leave your questions moving forward in the form of a comment on any video or stream on the channel, and I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. But happy to take questions tonight. Whether you are a member, whether you send a super or not, regardless, if you're enjoying the dialogue, the conversation, and all that good stuff, I only ask that you consider liking the stream. That helps me out for algorithm purposes. Appreciate that in advance. Let's see. I see Arturo has the first question, and Greg, again, congrats on the win, even though your Vikings hurt you. Trade Justin Jefferson for Lamar and JSN. I mean, my first thought here is no, but I would want to know the rest of your lineup, or I would want to know the rest of your roster. Who is your quarterback that you would be, moving off of for Lamar? Smith and Jigba is a massive, massive downgrade from Justin Jefferson. So how strong are the rest of your wide receivers? Give me a little extra context here, Arturo. I'm happy to help out with this. I'm happy to help out with, any more thoughts here. But initially, I'm thinking no. Justin Jefferson is one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL. I don't want to move off of him. Lamar, unless I have a glaring hole at quarterback. And again, quarterback is an easy position to fill. Lamar Jackson obviously is a top 2 or 3 option any given week, but Justin Jefferson to Smith and Jigba is a massive, massive downgrade. So I'm not super bullish on this. If it's a super flex league, that's one thing. If it's one quarterback, I think ultimately my answer is no, but let me know what the rest of your lineup or the rest of your roster in general looks like, and we can revisit this. But I'm thinking no. I'm thinking no on this. Justin Jefferson is too good for me to give up in a one quarterback league unless I'm getting like a stud running back or another stud wide receiver. In one quarterback leagues, it's too easy of a position to fill to trade one of the best wide receivers in the league for a quarterback. You have Pittsburgh and you have Houston defenses, Greg. I mean Washington. I would pick up Washington. I'm not sure who Houston plays this week, admittedly, but I can look that up right now. But I mean, target any defense that's playing the Dallas Cowboys right now. They're awful. They do okay. Houston gets Tennessee this week at home. So that's actually not bad. If you want to save your fob bucks, Greg, I don't blame you. That's fine. If you want to save them for something else or down the line or for the postseason, it's fine to rock with Houston. They have Tennessee at home. That's a perfectly good matchup. Pittsburgh against Cleveland is also good, but they are on the road, and it is a division game. So while they are excellent, they are one of the elite units in the league. These particular circumstances, I'm not super bullish on. Houston is fine. You're fine to rock with Houston. I see a couple more members jumping in. I see David. What's going on? I see He Hate Me. What's going on? He Hate Me. Appreciate you, dog. And I see MVM, and I see Jose send a super. Thank you so much, Jose. Very kind of you. I will get to all of you guys coming up, and then I will get to everybody else following that. So appreciate everybody's patience as I work through these questions. No, I'm good with Houston, Greg. That's fine. Tennessee at home. That's perfectly fine. Is Nick's better rest of season than Love? I don't know that I'm necessarily ready to go there because I love the Packers playoff schedule. Is that pun intended? I love schedule. So I don't think, remember, he played a road game against a division opponent. And for how we can all talk shit on the Bears, right? They haven't been good. They haven't played well. The Packers are better than them. Division games can and often are very funky. I take, down lackluster-ish performances in those scenarios with a grain of salt. I would probably just stick with Love. Who do the Packers have this week? Home against the 49ers. That is, it's a little bit more of a challenging matchup, but it's a home game. And so I don't want to be too, I don't want to swing too drastically in the other direction and just pivot off of him. Again, Nix is in the situation that Love was in this past week. Nix is on the road against the Raiders, and that might probably, it's a good matchup. Nix might carve him up, but it is a division game. And for Nix, it's a road game. So, maybe rock with Love for one more week before we consider alternate options. I would stick with Love. And the Packers playoff schedule is awesome. So the fantasy playoff schedule is awesome. So I'm not ready to give up on Love or move off of Love or anything like that. And even still against Chicago, I mean, he had 2 touchdowns, one on the ground, one through the air. It was fine. It's not great, but it's fine. It's good enough. We'll take it. Let's keep it moving with Love. And then and Bijan's on bye this week, right? You could stick with I would probably pick up I want to say pick up Rico. I just don't trust this Cowboys offense anymore, so maybe not him. Could probably stick with Dobbs gets the 49ers, so maybe not him. Elijah Moore gets the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, so maybe not him. Who do the Patriots have this week? Pop Douglas could be fine. Caught 5 balls this past week for 59 yards, remains heavily involved. Oh, he gets the Dolphins. They got a really good secondary. Let's see. Remind me who your other starting running back is, Greg, and maybe just grab their backup if he's available. If not, Watson is perfectly fine. I guess I would rock with Christian Watson. Maybe I wouldn't. He's difficult to trust, but at home, you already have Love. So, keep building those stacks. That would be fun. Rico would be my answer, but this Cowboys offense is impossible to trust, and Washington's defense has been playing better lately. Ertz, I don't want to pick up because you already have Hawkinson. I would say Watson. You've Mixon and Jones. Pick up Cam Akers. You could pick up Cam Akers, Greg. That's right. You have Aaron Jones. If Cam Akers is out there, maybe grab him. Just shape yourself up for get your roster ready for the postseason, for the fantasy postseason. It's probably where I would go. I would just pick up Cam Akers for the insurance. Unless you need a start this week. But if you need a start this week, then maybe Watson. But if you can stash somebody, then I would go Akers. What's going on, David? I need to know who's available for you before I make any suggestions. I would need to know who's let me know, David. Follow up with who's available. I mean, Trey Benson is a good stash. Roschon, I guess you could add. He got a goal line opportunity, turn it into a touchdown. Cam Akers, I need to know who's available for you before I don't know who's on your waiver, so let me know. And really quick, Arturo, I see you have Jaden Daniels, so you have no need for Lamar. Don't make that trade. Keep Justin Jefferson. Don't make that trade. Greg, who's your wife's cousin? That's pretty damn cool. That's pretty damn cool. And as far as Richardson, I would continue to stick with Love. His playoff schedule is spectacular. Richardson is worth it for those who are dealing with a bye week this week or are dealing with bad quarterback play, or if you lost somebody to injury like Dak, because Richardson is dicey. His 4-week stretch here, while he has a great ceiling. Week 14 bye and then week 15 on the road in Denver, which is going to be the first week of the playoffs for a lot of people. That's not super enticing. Richardson's a short-term play. But if you already have Love, then you have your guy. Let's see. What's going on? He hate me. Pittman, Leggett, Pierce, Watson, Adunze. Is this to pick somebody up? Is this to pick someone up, or is this to play these guys? I mean, I would pick up Leggett. He's going to have all of the opportunities as probably the X receiver for the Panthers rest of season. That's the guy I'm most interested in here. Pittman and Pierce cannibalize each other. I do like, again, I like Watson. He is a big play waiting to happen, but it's just a crowded Packers receiver room. Sometimes it's going to be Watson. Sometimes it's going to be Romeo Doubs. Occasionally it might be Dontavian Wicks. I thought Wicks would be more consistent, but that hasn't come to fruition. I would say Leggett here is if this is like a pickup, it's Leggett. If it's to start some players, I guess I would say Leggett. And then who do the Colts even have this week? Oh, it's the Lions, right? Well, Pittman and Pierce are in play. If it's a start question. If it's a pickup question, Leggett. If it's a start question and you have all these guys, then I guess I would go Leggett. I have a difficult time trusting Pittman. And we got to see practice reports and injury updates and all that. So if Pittman can't go for whatever reason, I think he's fine. But I guess I would say Pierce in the event that he can't go. And then Watson is the dart throw. Adunze I like. It's just he's hard to trust because this Bears offense remains lackluster at best. But of these players, Leggett is the guy that I like. Oh, you have to play 3. Well, you're going to get Evans back this week, presumably. So you'll have Evans. I would play Leggett, Evans, assuming he's back. And, I guess tentatively Pittman. It's a good matchup by the numbers, and you know the Colts are going to have to throw against the Lions, who are scoring 40 points against everybody. So Evans, Leggett, and I guess Pittman, if he's healthy and good to go, even though he's impossible to trust. I guess the last name with Pittman. Does he still, where do they have him on the depth chart? Did they, move him down at all? He caught 5 passes for 46 yards this past week, which is not bad. I would say probably Pittman. He hate me as your third guy behind Leggett and Evans. 5 for 46. Not the best, but not the best matchup by the numbers either. He gets a much more favorable matchup against the Lions this week, so I would tentatively plan to start Pittman. But obviously, we got to see what practice reports, injury updates, all that good stuff look like. But Evans, Leggett, and Pittman is where I would go. That is where I would go. Let's see. What's going on, MVM? So don't worry about Taysom Hill because the Saints are on bye this week, so you can't use him anyway. I mean, I would definitely pick up Javonte Williams for probably for Rico. I would drop Rico Dowdle. I hate to say I've been a Rico guy. He was a 0 RB mini hero for us for that, for the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season. But with Dak out, this offense is sunk. The Cowboys are toast. The only viable option to start on the Cowboys offense is CeeDee Lamb. Everybody else is impossible to trust. Jake Ferguson can be dropped. I think Rico Dowdle can be dropped, especially if Javonte Williams is available. If somebody panic dropped him this past week because Audric Estime looked like he was taking over, Javonte said not so fast and took the reins back. So if Javante's available on waivers, he's the pickup, and I would drop Rico. I don't think Rico helps anybody anymore, unfortunately. He had a nice run to start the season as a 0 RB. He was shaping up to be a 0 RB, league winner for folks who hammered wide receiver early and took running backs late. That doesn't look like it's going to be the case anymore, though. Cowboys offense is sunk. CeeDee Lamb is the only viable Cowboy worth rostering in fantasy for the rest of the season. Rico can be dropped for somebody like Javonte. Yep. And since you have Jaden Daniels, honestly, if you want to pick up Taysom Hill for week 12 and onward, or excuse me, week 13 and onward, then you could probably just drop Herbert because you have Jaden Daniels. If it's a one quarterback league, I know Herbert's playing really, really well right now, but there's not going to be a scenario where you start Herbert over Jaden Daniels at this point. So, yeah, Javonte and Taysom for Herbert and Dowdle is that's fine. That's where I would go. Let's see. Jose sent me a super. Thank you so much, Jose. Appreciate that very much. Is this to start players? I mean, the first three. You're going to start Puka every week. You still need to start CD every week. And I would start A.J. Brown, even though he had a bit of a down week against Washington, because he gets a great matchup this week against the Rams, and he has 10 days rest. I wouldn't play Terry, and I wouldn't play Mike Evans in his first game back. This is a great collection of wide receivers to have, Jose. If your trade deadline hasn't passed yet, you may want to consider flipping one of these guys for a rock-solid option at running back if you could use some running back help. But I would play those first three names. Stud. Even CD dealing with Cooper Rush. He had a nice game last night, so you can go back to the well with CD Lamb. Evans, I'm firing him up if I need him, but you don't need him in his first game back. You can afford to give him a week to get his sea legs back under him. And then, of course, he actually has to suit up and play. We're expecting him to, but until it's definitive, we can't sit here and say for sure that it's going to happen. I would play Puka, I would play Lamb, and I would play A.J. Brown. And Puka and A.J. play each other on Sunday night. If that's a high-scoring affair, they'll feed off of each other, and that is it's called same game correlation for anybody who's interested. When you have two players where you expect or you think there's a good chance that a lot of points are getting scored, it's like that same game correlation where, like, if this then that. If the Eagles are scoring a lot of points and A.J. Brown's getting some gets a touchdown, picking up a lot of yards, and the Rams have to keep pace, then that means that Puka is also heavily involved on the other side. The production kind of bounces off of each other. So I like finding those opportunities where I can. So AJ and Puka in the same game Sunday night in prime time for sure. And then CeeDee Lamb, he reminded us that even in a bad situation, we still need to start him. So yeah, I would play those first three. Appreciate the super, Jose. Let me know if you need anything else. Let's see. Just wrapping again for anybody just joining or waiting. Appreciate y'all's patience. I am just running through member questions right now, and then I will get to everybody else. I promise I have my spot in line. That's right, Greg. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, Akers rest of season but Watson for this week. I agree. Again, Arturo, do not make that Justin Jefferson for Lamar trade. If you already have Jaden Daniels, you have your quarterback. Oh, great. Your wife's cousin is Alex Anzalone. Holy hell. That's insane. That's wild. I would tell you to invite him to Thanksgiving dinner, but he's going to have to play. Okay, I have the member questions, and then again, he hate me. Evans if he plays, and then Liggett and Pittman. If Evans is out, then I might play both Colts wide receivers and just swing for the fences because, again, the Lions can be thrown on. You can't run on them. Good luck running on them. Like, you have to, if you have Jonathan Taylor this week, you have to play him, but don't expect a ceiling game against this incredible Lions front. But you can throw the ball on them. So if Evans doesn't play, then I would play those first three names, Pittman, Liggett, Pierce. But if Evans does return, we're getting him into your lineup for sure. Okay, those are the member questions that I saw, and also Jose sent a super. Thank you again. So I'm going to go back up to the top. But again, if I see any other member questions jump in, I will jump down and prioritize them. That is a perk of being a member of the channel. But let's get into it. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. Would I trade Hurts, Flowers, and Jennings for Burrow and Nico? Not if I need a win this week, because Burrow's on bye. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Hurts. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Burrow. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Burrow. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Burrow. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Burrow. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Burrow. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Burrow. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade Nico. If you're in good shape, then I would trade if you're in good shape for the postseason and you can afford the potential hit at quarterback that you're taking by not having Hurts, then okay, fine, because I would rather have Nico Collins than Zay Flowers and Jawan Jennings, even though Jawan Jennings has been balling out recently. I don't mind Nico for Flowers and Jennings, but if you need a win this week, then I can't do this deal because you don't have Joe Burrow. So it depends on a couple of things. Your record, where are you in the playoff race, and what does your wide receiver depth look like? Because while I do think you'd be getting the best wide receiver in this trade, you are sacrificing some depth in order to make it happen. So what's your record? How badly do you need to win this week because you won't have Burrow if you trade for him? And what does your wide receiver depth look like because you'd be giving up 2 receivers for 1? Admittedly, though, Nico is the best receiver in this trade, but Jawan Jennings is balling out. Let's see. I got through all these member questions. Oh, David, again, if you're still in here, remind me who the waiver wire options are at running back, and we can review them. Kicker recommendations for this week. I don't know. Is Bates on by or is Bates available? I mean, he might not be. But that's kicker 1 potentially for the rest of the season attached to this Lions offense. Jake Bates, he's rostered in 72% of leagues. There's a good chance he is not available. Is Jason Sanders still out there? If Jason Sanders is still out there, he's available in over 50% of leagues on Sleeper, so it's possible he's available in your league. He's been kicking the ball well. The Dolphins are struggling to finish off scoring opportunities, so he's going to continue to get a lot of opportunities to kick field goals. He kicked 2 more field goals this past week, kicked 4 extra points, had a long of 46. You'll take that every day of the week. Sanders, if he's out there. And if you can get Disland, if you have the space for both and you want to pick up both, then sure. I think you should only pick up 1 tight end, but obviously with Taysom being on a bye this week, if you want to plan to rock with him rest of season, then it's perfectly fine to grab Disley for this week. And hell yeah, give Quinyon Mitchell Defensive Rookie of the Year. That man is balling. Quinyon is incredible. He's made the Eagles defense fantasy relevant, not single-handedly, but that secondary is night and day from last year. Last year, the Eagles defense was a target in any which way you could. Now it's like you want to avoid them at all costs. Quinyon Mitchell has a lot to do with that. He's been balling out. And Greg, really quick, I would keep Rico. I think I would keep Rico over Estime, but honestly, Rico is really difficult to trust rest of season. But he is viable running back depth, I guess. Watson over. I think Watson over Liggett just because I expect better quarterback play for Christian Watson, but Liggett is the X receiver who you expect to handle most of the targets or a wide receiver 1 target share rest of season. So that is more valuable in and of itself. But Watson is a little bit more of a priority for you, especially having Love. Stack it up. Let's see. Oh, this was the super, Jose. Thank you so much. Do you pick up Stafford, Herbert, or Richardson? The upside play is Richardson. Stafford gets the Eagles this week, and that is not a good matchup. He carved up the Patriots this past week, which was great. The Eagles are a different animal. We just got Quinyon Mitchell again. He is a baller. The Eagles, top to bottom, are killing it on defense right now. They're a difficult defense to play against. And then Herbert, who do the Chargers have this week? Herbert gets the Ravens at home. That is a damn good matchup. Ravens can't stop anybody through the air. Herbert is safer. Richardson is the Konami code, obviously the all or nothing. He may be a little bit more limited as far as a runner this week against that Detroit defense, but you should expect the Colts to be able to air it out against the Lions. I guess you expect the Chargers to have a more success through the air against the Ravens, who are getting killed through the air by everybody. I guess Herbert is my answer, actually, now that I think about it. Richardson is the Konami code, right? He's the cheat code when all things are going well, when he's firing on all cylinders. It'll be curious to see if he can successfully do that against the Lions, who I think they are. They're the best team in the league. And they've got a ferocious defense. The secondary, not as much, but the front seven is lethal. So that might make things tough for Richardson. I guess my answer is Herbert, because you want to start pocket passers against the Baltimore Ravens. 300 passing yards and 2+ scores almost feels like a layup against Baltimore at this point. So I guess my answer is Herbert. And then the Chiefs get the Carolina Panthers. That's a good spot. Steelers get the Browns on the road. Division game, short week. On one hand, you could expect low scoring, but on the other hand, those particular circumstances aren't my favorite. I guess I would go Kansas City. Carolina's coming off a bye week, so they're rested for that game. But Kansas City's the better team. I think I say the Chiefs. And they're pissed off, right? They lost that. They're no longer unbeaten. They lost to the Bills. I would expect the Chiefs to right the ship. If Kansas City had beaten the Bills this past week, we might be looking at that Carolina game as a bit of a letdown for them. Not necessarily saying that they would lose that game, but it might be a little bit more competitive if Kansas City kind of comes in sleepwalking into that game. But that's not the case. They lost to the Bills. They lost to Buffalo, and they lost their unbeaten season. I got to imagine Kansas City comes in focused and ready to go this week against an inferior opponent. I would take the Chiefs. I would take the Chiefs defense. And yes, Jordan Mason can be dropped for Bucky Irving, especially if you do not have Christian McCaffrey. Bucky Irving should be on a roster. 100%. Just to finish off this question, you've got good receivers, but you don't have a playoff spot locked up yet. And I don't know who would your replacement at quarterback be for this week? Like, who are you picking up? That's what I would be curious to know. If you want to drop Amari Cooper, you can. I think, I shouldn't say I think. I would speculate that Cooper re-enters the conversation of potentially being startable and a guy that is worth having on your roster rest of season coming out of the Bills bye week for two reasons. One, it's another week for him to learn the system and get acclimated with the playbook and the offense and all that good stuff. And number two, it's a week for him to get healthy. He played through, what I think was a wrist injury this past week, probably less than 100%, but was able to give it a go. He only caught 2 balls, but it was for 55 yards. Not bad in a limited opportunity. How many snaps did Amari Cooper play this past week? Cooper played, dealing with the injury, played 51% of the snaps. So he was out there half the time. Gets healthy coming out of the bye. Hopefully, another week in the system, in the offense. He's fine to drop for now if you really need the roster spot, but I would maybe try to get him back before waivers process week 13, because somebody will pick him up after the bye week. So I would proceed with a little bit of caution there. And real quick, MVM, Smith and Jigba's is on waivers. You could drop him for... I suppose you could drop him for Dobbs. I mean, was he was kind of... Was he quiet this past week? Oh, God. What was I? Well, I must have missed it. 10 catches, 110 yards. Okay, JSN. Over Dobbs. Yeah. Smith and Jigba over Dobbs. I must have missed that. My apologies. Yeah, if he's on waivers and you have Dobbs, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You can add Smith and Jigba. You can put a claim in for him. Yeah, I'm good with that. 10 catches. I didn't even realize that. Good for him. These young receivers are turning a corner. Drop Waddle to pick up Quentin Johnston. I like the idea of picking up Quentin Johnston. I understand wanting to drop Jalen Waddle. I personally don't think I can bring myself to do that, even though Waddle has had an awful, forgettable season. I won't tell you not to. I don't think I could bring myself to do it, admittedly, and maybe that's just me stubbornly, hanging on to a guy with high expectations, high draft capital, all that stuff, expecting more, hoping for more, thinking that he could still salvage his season. Maybe that's just me stubbornly believing in a guy who, let's call a spade a spade. It's been a lost season. It's been a forgettable lost season for Waddle. So while I don't think I would bring myself to do this, I don't blame you if you ultimately decide to pull that trigger, because Quentin Johnston has been better than Jalen Waddle this year. At least as far as, from a fantasy perspective, at the very least. So yeah, if you want to, I understand. Let's see. Let's keep it moving. Start the Chiefs defense or the Steelers defense. So yeah, again, I think the Chiefs are the play that I would consider here for two reasons. One, the Steelers have the better defense. The Steelers probably have the best defense in the league, or at least top 3. But they're on the road on a short week against a division opponent. So that organically gives me some pause. Are they a mismatch for the Cleveland Browns? Yes. But given the circumstances, they have to travel on a short week, an emotional win this past week, beating the Baltimore Ravens, the hated division rival, the team that they're actually in contention with for the division title. They beat the Ravens. Like, this could be, I'm not saying it will be, but it could be a bit of a letdown for the Steelers against an inferior opponent, even though it is a division opponent, because they just had a great, probably emotional, hard-fought win against Baltimore this past week. Now they got to go on the road on a short week and play Cleveland, who on paper is not as good as them. This has the makings of a trap. And I'm not saying the Steelers are going to lose this game, but it could be a situation where they play down to the situation a little bit. Kansas City, on the other hand, they just lost. They lost this past week, and they lost their undefeated season. Now they get an inferior opponent on the schedule. I would think they course correct and get things right and play well this week and get back in the win column against a bad Panthers team. I would play the Chiefs. Let's see. Start. Who is this? Winston? Was this an extension of this question? Because I don't want to play Winston against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Cousins is on bye this week. So I'm not sure who your other options are, but let me know. As far as Hurts or Kyler, I mean, I'm playing Hurts. Hurts is a top 3 fantasy quarterback every week with Allen and Lamar. And I guess Jaden Daniels is up there as well, so top 4. Kyler is close to that conversation. He's coming out of his bye week, so he's rested. He gets the Seahawks on the road. That's a pretty good matchup. Hurts, I think, has a better one against the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. And Hurts has a mini bye week as well. It's not a full bye week because they did play a game, but they played on Thursday. Now they have 10 days rest for the LA Rams. I would play Hurts. He has A.J. Brown. He has Devontae Smith. He's going against a good offense on the other side with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams. I would expect points to be scored in this game. I'll take Hurts. The tush push, they both can run. I feel like Hurts is a little bit more of a threat to get a rushing score than Kyler, although they're both very good options for that. Hurts has the advantage as far as the weapons he throws to, plus the matchup and situation. Prime time, big-time players tend to come out a little bit more in prime time. They step up in prime time. I'll take Jalen Hurts. I'll take Hurts. As far as Otton or McBride, the Bucks have, so McBride plays the Seahawks. It's not a bad matchup. Otton gets, who's Otton get? And again, the Bucks are going to get Mike. In all likelihood, the Bucks are getting Mike Evans back this week. They get the Giants. That's a tougher matchup by the numbers, although Jadavian Sanders did get a touchdown against them in Munich. And Otton figures to remain a mainstay in this offense rest of season with no Chris Godwin. And you trust the Bucs offense to have success in general. I would say if Mike Evans plays, I would probably play Trey McBride. And if Mike Evans ultimately is not able to play, I would probably play Cade Otton. So it just depends on the health of Mike Evans. And then as far as Andrews versus Hawkinson, I would Baltimore gets the Chargers. Hawkinson gets the Bears. Andrews against Pittsburgh this past week. 2 catches, 22 yards. Hawkinson was also pretty quiet. Two volatile options. I guess I trust the Ravens offense more than I trust the Vikings offense just in a vacuum. So I'm tempted to just say go Andrews and hope that he bounces back because he has returned to form in recent weeks. I'll say Andrews. Hawkinson, we need to see a little bit more consistency from. I'll say Andrews. Roll with Winston. Who do the Dolphins have? Because I don't want to play Winston against Pittsburgh. Really do not want to do that. Tua against the Patriots? I would pick up Tua. I would play Tua. I'd play Tua. Because Caleb gets the Vikings this week. Their secondary is beatable, but the Bears are impossible to trust right now. And Stafford gets the Eagles. That's a brutal matchup. I'll say Tua. Tua gets the Patriots. The Patriots just got carved up. I'll take Tua. And it's a home game. I'll take Tua over Winston for sure. And then Darnold or Anthony Richardson. Assuming everybody's all healthy and all good. Darnold gets the Bears in a division game. Anthony Richardson gets the Lions. Is it a home game for either one of these guys? It's a road game for Darnold. It's a home game for Anthony Richardson. I'll say Darnold is your floor play and Richardson is your aggressive play. It depends on, I would just look at your matchup. Are you a favorite? Are you in good shape? Or are you an underdog and you maybe need to play aggressive? If you're in good shape and you're a favorite and you like your team top to bottom, I'll take Darnold. If you're desperate or, you're feeling a little more desperate, you feel like an underdog, you need to play aggressive to maybe win this week, then I would say roll the dice on Richardson. Just depends on what you need and your situation. Andrew's Jose jumping in. If anybody feels the need to or feels like you want to respond to any questions, if you have an opinion, by all means, let's help each other out. So appreciate it, Jose. Would I deal Dobbins, Dell, and Darnold for Puka and Geno? Dobbins, Dell, and Darnold. I would need to know the rest of your roster, but yeah, this looks good to me. Either one, it looks good to me. I would want to know the rest of your roster. I would want to know the rest of your lineup. So, because you're not going to be getting any. I mean, Lamb and Pollard is intriguing. And you would recoup some running back depth for giving up Dobbins. Puka is probably somebody I prefer to have at this point over CD, just because Puka has Stafford and CD has Cooper Rush. But CD did remind us last night that he can still perform even with bad quarterback play. I mean, let me know the rest of your roster, but I am open to either one of these offers for sure. And then Kyler wins. This one's straightforward. Play Kyler. No short week, coming off the bye, perfectly good matchup. Winston has to play the Steelers. Yeah, no, I don't want to. That's not a matchup that I want for Jameis Winston. I'll Kyler. Give me Kyler. I literally just looked at it. Who are they playing? Seattle on the road. Yeah, there's nothing scary about that matchup. Kyler, for sure. Coming off his bye week versus Winston on a short week, Kyler. I did follow up on this question. So this was the so you don't have a playoff spot locked up yet. You have a good squad and you're in decent shape. But I would want to know who your quarterback is. You can get Stroud from the Nico owner. But then you gotta deal with the fact that you gotta roster two quarterbacks for a week. And then do you feel like you have to keep Stroud because you traded for him and he's probably too good to drop, but he's nothing for you because you have Burrow? I might just keep Hurts. And Flowers and Jennings. Obviously, Nico would be a huge get, but I don't want to trade for Burrow when I don't have a playoff spot locked up yet. I would then have to make a separate trade to get another quarterback in somebody like Stroud, but then Stroud is just burning a hole on your bench for the rest of the season because you're not going to go to him once Burrow's passed his bye week. Meanwhile, Hurts has passed his bye week and avoids this headache for you. Plus, I guess the last piece here, I would be curious to know this person that you're trading with, what's their situation? Are you doing them a solid and helping them out? And are they in contention for the playoffs with you as well? And they're trying to navigate Burrow's bye week and they could get Hurts from you. But what if you're in contention with them for a playoff spot? I think I ultimately say no, just keep Hurts and Flowers and Jennings. I think I would just keep what you have. Because you don't have a playoff spot locked up just yet. You're currently slated to play in the first round of the playoffs. I don't want to lose ground by potentially giving up a QB1, having to make another trade for another quarterback, and then losing a bench spot to a QB2 that I don't actually need. I would keep Hurts. I would keep the pieces you have. One tight end between Jonnu, Disley, and Ertz. I would probably say Jonnu. I mean, I don't know if I could trust or chase a 100-yard, 2-touchdown performance again, but Tua's not pushing the ball downfield this year. He's going to Jonnu a lot. Tua is checking it down a ton, and Jonnu is the main beneficiary. I mean, their offense has been lackluster, but I still trust it from the perspective of they can go vertical. They can still go vertical with Tyreek and Jalen, and they make it difficult to stack the box. Jonnu's going to continue to have a lot of underneath opportunities. And if Tua's getting the ball out as quick as he can because there's concerns that he's going to pick up his 40th concussion in his life, like, I'm not trying to be facetious or rude, but like, let's call a spade a spade. Tua's racked up a lot of them. So if that means he's getting the ball out really quick, the direct beneficiary of that this year hasn't been Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill. It's been Jonnu. I'll take Jonnu. If you need just one tight, I'll take Jonnu. 100%. Yeah, give me Jonnu. Disley balled out last week. This past week, or 2 days ago. I'll take the L on that one. I wasn't super bullish on Disley. He came through. Should be good rest of season, catching passes from Herbert, who is on fire right now. Jonnu, man. Jonnu's getting a lot of volume. Eight targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets. He has 6 targets or more in 5 out of his past 6 games. And the schedule rest of the way is pretty good. Yeah, I'll take Jonnu. Need a running back for the week. Javonte. I mean, yeah, Javonte. He is the star of these guys. He's the most likely to get the most opportunities. If you have James Conner, I want Trey Benson. And honestly, I want Arizona Cardinals on my team in general because I love their playoff schedule for all of their position players. So I want Trey Benson as a stash, but he's a little bit more viable if I have James Conner. But for this week, Javonte. The Raiders are terrible. You can see Javonte replicating a decent amount of the production that he got this past week, and he's the most likely to receive the most opportunities from his team's backfield of these other names. Javonte is going to get more opportunities than Trey Benson, Cam Akers, and Tajay Spears. So Javonte. I would pick up Javonte. Yep. But if you have James Conner, Trey Benson is a priority, and that goes for anybody. If Trey Benson is out there on waivers, especially if you have James Conner, make room for him. Make room for him by any means necessary. Secure that backfield for the fantasy playoffs because their schedule is incredible. Javonte for this week. Benson is a great stash, though, for the rest of the season. But for this week, Javonte. And Greg, really quick, again, I got to get to my members first. That is a perk of being a member of the channel, but I have my spot in line. I see everybody's questions, so sit tight. Appreciate your patience. I will get to everybody. You can drop Rico here, Greg, if you want to pick up Liggett. That's totally fine. Rico, we got to pour one out for him. He was a 0 RB hero for those who hammered wide receiver early in drafts and tried to grab value running backs late in drafts. Rico was a gem. That doesn't look like that's going to be the case for the rest of the season. Dallas's offense is toast. They are sunk outside of CeeDee Lamb and I guess Cooper Rush in superflex leagues, like deep superflex leagues. Outside, there's nobody worth rostering. Rico can be dropped. Jake Ferguson can be dropped. Jalen Tolbert can be dropped. There's nobody outside of CeeDee on Dallas's offense that is worth rostering for fantasy. Rico can be dropped for somebody like Xavier Legette, who is going to get a wide receiver 1 target share for the rest of the year. I hate it. I was so bullish on Rico. I have been bullish on Rico all year, and he deserved more opportunities. He still deserves more opportunities than he's getting from the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy's dumbass last week said Rico's the bell cow. He's going to move, he's the lead back, and we need to get him more opportunities. And then I see Ezekiel Elliott out there, 47-year-old Ezekiel Elliott, still running routes. Like, what are we doing, Dallas? I know your season is toast because Dak is hurt, but you're not even using the best personnel combinations that you can. rant over. And no, I would prefer to have Leggett over Roschon because Leggett's going to get a wide receiver 1 target share rest of year. Leggett over Rico, Leggett over Roschon. Not Thielen. Too old. He's 150 years old. No thanks. Carolina, I can't imagine. I mean, Thielen will play, but Carolina's got to be embracing their youth movement at this point. I'll take Leggett. Drop Kraft, Demarcus Robinson, or Jatavian Sanders for Elijah Moore. You have Noah Brown. Can you drop Noah Brown? Oh, T. Higgins, Drake is on Drake. Could you drop Noah Brown? I don't think Noah Brown is a hold. He's got a great matchup against Dallas, but he's a dart throw. You know, he's been like the production has been very up and down. He's only had a couple of really viable weeks. I would drop Noah Brown for Elijah Moore if that's where we're at. And you have T. Higgins in London, so you obviously bye week, bye Mageddon, bye Apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. I would rather drop Noah Brown, and you could play Elijah Moore then if you need to. I would drop Noah Brown. That's where I would go. Bucky. I would play Bucky over Judy. I like the Browns wide receivers. I do. And I love when, I love when Jameis is throwing them the football because Jameis loves to YOLO ball. I think he's like top 5 in yards per attempt every year of his career. Jameis Winston doesn't get enough credit as a YOLO hero. He's not exactly an all-pro, but I appreciate Jameis Winston because he's just chucking that shit as deep as he can go, as far as he can go, and hoping that somebody catches it. And he doesn't give a shit about the interceptions. He's just throwing it deep. Love Jameis Winston. But in this spot against the Steelers, short week, I'd rather not. I'll take Bucky Irving against the Giants. I'll take Bucky against the Giants for sure. Let's see. Oscar, Forever Eagles, go Birds. Luke, I see all your questions. And Albert, I see all your questions. I will get to you guys. Appreciate your patience, but I see a couple more member questions jumping in as a perk of being a member of the channel. I got to get to these questions first. What's going on, Fortune? Good to see you. Welcome to Buy Mageddon. Welcome to Buy Apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. If it's a 1-quarterback league, would you start Bo Nix? Because if it's a 1-quarterback league, then Bo Nix is droppable if you really need a stream. I mean, Taysom Hill at this point, is he going to get 40 points in a game again? Probably not. But is he going to continue to operate in the role that he had last week where they put him everywhere? Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, popcorn seller. Like, he's going to continue to do freaking everything. I would probably want to hold rest of the season. Again, unless you have George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, one of the clear-cut, bona fide studs. I know Kittle missed this past week, but he's still in this conversation. Kittle, Bowers, Kelce, Cade Otton. If you have any one of these guys and like clear-cut, bona fide stud at tight end, then I guess Taysom Hill is droppable. But if you don't have any one of those guys, then I would drop Bo Nix. It's in a 1-quarterback league, assuming you have another guy that you're going to start, then I would probably drop Bo. Watson's perfectly fine to pick up. Tough matchup by the numbers, even though Jackson Smith and Jigba just went nuclear against San Francisco. So, maybe Watson can replicate what he did this past week. Yeah, it depends, Fortune, on how immediately you need either one of these other guys. Like, do you need Taysom for week 13, or do you need Bo Nix for week 13 when they come out of the bye, or when other players come back from the bye? Like, do you intend? Hill obviously is on bye this week. Nix is in an intriguing spot against the Raiders. How likely are you to use one of these two guys again? If the answer is I have Brock Bowers, I'm never going to play Taysom Hill again, then drop Hill. If the answer is I have Lamar, I have Jalen Hurts, I have Jaden Daniels, I have Joe Burrow, I have Josh Allen. If you have one of those guys, then you have no need for Bo Nix. So who is more like, do you have a mainstay at quarterback or tight end where it's like, this is my dude? Then I would drop the backup. So it depends. If you're unsettled in both situations, then I guess by default, Hill is the drop because he's on bye this week. I wouldn't play Nix over Kyler. Kyler's rounding into form. And now is past his bye week and has a beautiful playoff schedule. I would rock with Kyler. I would rock with Kyler. McBride over Taysom, yes. Kyler McBride stack? Yes. Yeah. McBride over Taysom, which I know is volatile. It's dicey. McBride hasn't separated himself as a slam dunk, like top 3 or 4 option on the season. However, his target share is incredible, and so is his playoff schedule. So, honestly, both are droppable if you're in a really bad spot. Nix is droppable and Taysom Hill is droppable if you really need bye week fill-ins. If you have Kyler and McBride, they're both past their bye now, and they both have incredible matchups for the rest of the season. You could drop both. Hill is droppable, Nix is droppable. Yeah. They're both droppable. Then I would rock with the card. I want Arizona Cardinals on my team. I want Arizona Cardinals. I want Kyler. I want James Conner. I want Marvin Harrison. I want Trey McBride. And I want stashes like Trey Benson. I want them on my playoff teams going into week 15. The Arizona Cardinals have a spectacular playoff schedule for all of their position guys. Their whole offense has an incredible schedule. I want them on my team. Let's see. Herbert or Daniels MVM? I mean, I got to play Jaden Daniels. Herbert is balling out. Make no mistake. Justin Herbert is playing some fantastic football right now. He's killing it. But Jaden Daniels is a cheat code at this point. He's a Konami code. He is the ceiling play every week. We got to rock with him. We have to. And against Dallas this week, I mean, I want to play anybody against Dallas. I want to play my offensive players against Dallas, and I want to play any defense that I can against Dallas's offense. They're cooked. The Cowboys are toast. They are done. They are dead in the water, and you should be targeting them in any which way that you can. If I have Jaden Daniels, I'm playing Jaden Daniels. Justin Herbert does have a spectacular matchup this week against Baltimore, who can't stop a nosebleed in the secondary. It's just that rushing upside that Jaden Daniels brings to the table. I'm never going to be able to advocate against it going into any given week. Daniels. And no, Greg, Liggett is a better stash than MVS. I think there's more volume for Liggett. Yeah. MVS is, he's hitting on big plays, which is awesome, but there's a lot of volatility there. I'll take what I think is a little bit more potential consistent volume in Liggett. And then, let's see. Drop Waddle for Liggett. Appreciate it, Fortune. You didn't have to do that. Thank you so much, man. Very kind. Drop Waddle for... So I got a similar question about this earlier. I'm having a hard time dropping Jalen Waddle, even though it is 100% warranted. He has had an awful season. He's had a forgettable season. He has fallen short of every expectation anybody could have conceivably had for him coming into the year. So I have a hard time I have a hard time telling anybody not to move off of him. Me personally, I'm sitting here like, he's still in a good offense. He's still a good individual player. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he turns this around. Now, that could be just, that could be, a false reality that I'm painting for myself to try to make myself feel better for drafting him, right? But I don't think what I said is totally untrue. Waddle's a good player. There are still good pieces in this offense. You could see it coming together for him. However, obviously, it's been anything but a good year for Jalen Waddle. He's been really bad. So, if you are looking for more upside, either one of these names presents that. Maybe not Pearsall. That's a tough sell after he goose-egged this past week. But Leggett, again, I expect a wide receiver 1 target share for him rest of the year. I don't know if it's going to be pretty catching the ball from Bryce Young, but a wide receiver 1 target share is a wide receiver 1 target share, no matter how you slice it. Johnston, I mean, give him credit. His rookie season, everybody was ready to bury him. We'll leave him for dead. He looked terrible last year. The 3-cone drill was awful at the combine. I'm dating myself back to the pre-draft process. But Quentin Johnston has turned a corner. Justin Herbert is playing great football, like I just said right now. So if you want the wide receiver in the best situation, that's Quentin Johnston. Because Justin Herbert, between Tua, Bryce Young, and Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert is far and away the best quarterback, and he's playing like it right now. So if you want to go based on that, it's fine to pick up Quentin Johnston for Waddle. I personally am having a hard time severing ties with Jalen Waddle, but I don't blame you if you want to do it. If you're done, and I'm sure a lot of people are done with Jalen Waddle, and I can hardly blame you, Quentin Johnston is perfectly fine. He's getting the best quarterback play right now, and he's doing stuff with it. He's doing stuff with his opportunities. So QJ for Waddle, that's fine for me. That's fine for me. It takes some stones at this point to drop a guy like Jalen Waddle, but I don't blame you if you want to do it. Appreciate the super, Fortune. Very, very, very much appreciated. Very much not necessary, but very kind. Appreciate it. All right. And let me know if you need anything else. If anybody needs anything else, of course, follow-ups to answers and all that good stuff, just let me know. I got this question. I'm playing Bucky against the Giants, 100%. McBride or Otten rest of season? This is an interesting question. For this week, I think the question is straightforward. It just depends on if Mike Evans plays or not. If Mike Evans is out, I want to play Otten. If Mike Evans is in, I would go to McBride. I think I give the slightest of nods. It's very close. I give the slightest of nods to McBride. Again, the Arizona Cardinals playoff schedule is awesome. It is so good. And it's one that I want to chase. It's one that I want to target. If you have both of these guys, I would look to try to trade one. McBride's usage is so rock solid. 5 targets, 4 targets, 11 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets, 9 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. That is his target share on the season. I mean, he's cleared 6 targets in every game but 2 this year. He's got Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle, New England, Carolina, and the Rams the rest of the way. Outside of maybe Minnesota, that is an impeccably good slate of matchups. I'll give the slightest of nods to Trey McBride. Both are in good spots. I would want to trade one of these two if I can, and I guess I would advocate trading Otten because of how bullish I am on the Cardinals' playoff schedule. I think Otten is a top 5 or 6 option rest of the way. I guess I would put McBride just ahead of him. The tight ends that you want right now are for right now, no particular order: Bowers, Kittle, Kelsey, Otten, McBride, And I guess you could make the argument for Andrews and somebody like Taysom Hill. But I want Bowers, I want Kittle, I want Kelsey, I want McBride, I want Otten. I think that's my top 5. And then Andrews, Taysom, who am I forgetting? Andrews, Taysom, they're in that second tier. Hawkinson, maybe. Evan Ingram, maybe if Trevor Lawrence comes back, but if not, then he's droppable. Yeah. If you have both of these guys, be aggressive trying to trade one if the trade deadline is still hasn't passed yet in your league. I'll give the slightest of nods to McBride for the season, though. Love the Arizona Cardinals playoff schedule. Trade for them if you can. Trade for Arizona Cardinals. If you have Arizona Cardinals, hold them. If you don't, trade for them. Kyler, Connor, Harrison, McBride, don't care. And if you have James Conner, secure Trey Benson by any means necessary. Okay. Who would I consider picking up from the waiver wire? I mean, I'm happy you brought up Westbrook Akine because I haven't brought him up yet. I mean, it might be time to start talking about this guy as a regular. All this dude does is score touchdowns. Oh man, I got this. I won't mess around with anybody's emotions and say breaking news here, but I will say that Underdog Fantasy, one of my favorite apps to utilize for fantasy football, has just dropped their NFL playoffs best ball contests. So get on in there for a shot at $100,000. Underdog doesn't even pay me to advertise for them, but maybe one day they will. I guess I would say Westbrook Akine, and I would 100% drop Juju. I just don't. What a Juju played this past week, right? You wouldn't know it. Oh, he didn't do that. He had one catch. What the freaking do? Yeah, I would drop Juju for Westbrook Akine. Westbrook Akine, I think he has got like 5 touchdowns on 25 targets. That's outrageous. It might not be sustainable, but they don't have anybody else other than Calvin Ridley to throw the football to. With all due respect to Tyler Boyd, I think he's at the end. Yeah. And Will Levis is the new Jameis Winston. YOLO balls for days. Will Levis loves chucking that football downfield and hoping something happens. Something good anyway. Westbrook Akine. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about 2 highly volatile players between Westbrook Akine and MVS. I guess I'll take Westbrook Akine. Will Levis is way more of a YOLO ball thrower than Derek Carr is. And I know that MVS has hit the past couple of weeks, but he's going to continue to, he might cede opportunities here and there to Taysom Hill. And Levis is more of a deep ball thrower. I'll take Westbrook Akine. That's fine. If you have Mahomes and Darnold, it's tough to add a third quarterback or replace either one of these guys with another quarterback. I mean, what did Mahomes do? Did Mahomes disappoint yet again? He had an okay day against Buffalo. 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Didn't really run for that much, but that's not unexpected. He gets Carolina, Vegas. Yeah. Tell you what, Patrick Mahomes does not have a favorable fantasy playoff schedule. At Cleveland, home against Houston, at Pittsburgh. Dude, just throwing it out there, Patrick Mahomes does not have a desirable fantasy playoff schedule. And he hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire either. Can you try trading Mahomes? Is there somebody out there? I mean, Josh Allen is on bye this week. Joe Burrow is on bye this week. Kirk Cousins is on bye this week. Who else is on bye? Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr. I mean, the big ones are Allen and Burrow. Could you go to the person or the people in your league who have Allen and Burrow and see if they would take Mahomes for a 1-week fill-in? get some running back or wide receiver help in return, and then you could pick up Nix. Mahomes is a difficult guy to trust in one quarterback. He's been playing a little bit better recently. He's been putting up better numbers recently, but it's still fringe QB1 numbers, and his fantasy playoff schedule stinks. Can you move off of Mahomes, and then that way that frees you up to pick up Nix? That's what I would be curious to know, if you could do something like that. But if you can't, then I have a hard time, squeezing Nix in for either Mahomes or Darnold. Although, if you could bring yourself to drop Patrick Mahomes, it's not unwarranted. He's not a hold in one quarterback leagues. He's playing well recently. I think he's been a QB1 3 out of the past 4 weeks. But prior to that, been pretty lackluster. Like Mahomes on the season, QB 13, QB 14, QB 15, QB 17, QB 20, QB 19, QB 15, QB 4, QB 11, QB 17. He has 2 QB1 weeks this year. Patrick Mahomes is a QB2 for fantasy. He's the best quarterback in the NFL, but that doesn't mean that you're a QB1 for fantasy purposes. Food for thought. If you want to drop Mahomes, if you want to drop Mahomes for Nix, it would be a bold move. It would be a bold call, but it might be the right call because Mahomes has been disappointing and his playoff schedule sucks. So, yeah, we could move off Mahomes for Nix. Yeah, we could. I would try to dangle him first to the people in your league who have Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Might not work. Probably won't work, but doesn't hurt to try. Or anybody in your league who's hurting a quarterback. Maybe somebody who has Dak or had Dak, or if there's anybody else who's underperforming, Stroud even. See if they need a quarterback. See if Mahomes, if you can move off of him based off of name recognition and nothing else. Let's see. Prepping for the playoffs. You have Kyler, you have Russ, you have Darnold, and you have McCarthy. Is this Dynasty? This must be Dynasty if you're Justin Jefferson. I'm thinking JJ McCarthy. Nope, Justin Jefferson. So you want to keep Darnold. Russ, Richardson, Lawrence, Carr. Not Lawrence or Carr. They're on bad teams going nowhere. Richardson is interesting. But his playoff schedule isn't. On the road against Denver, bad matchup. At home against Tennessee, bad matchup. On the road against the Giants, that one's intriguing, but you got to get to championship week first. Russ, for the fantasy playoffs, has the Eagles on the road. That's not great. The Ravens on the road, who he just struggled against, admittedly, but it is a good matchup on paper. And then the Chiefs, that's not a great playoff schedule for Russ. Only one of those games is at home, and it's against Kansas City. If you can trade Russ for Anthony Richardson, I guess I would roll the dice on that upside and rock with Kyler and Darnold as your quarterbacks. Russ for Richardson is fine. I wouldn't touch Lawrence or Carr. Lawrence, we don't even know if he's going to finish the season. And honestly, same might be able to be said about Derek Carr. The Saints are going nowhere. Darnold for Anthony Richardson, or it's not Darnold. Keep Darnold, especially since you have Jefferson. But Russ for Anthony Richardson, I would take that gamble. I would roll those dice if you can. Yeah. Russ for Richardson is worth the roll of the dice. Do they have a bad Darnold's playoff schedule? The Bears, yeah, that's not great. Seattle, that's not bad. And then home against Green Bay, that's not bad either, although it is a division game. Yeah, I think you're okay. Yeah, Darnold, I think you're fine to tentatively rely on him as your QB2. But if you want to do Russ for if you can make Russ for Richardson happen, I would roll those dice. Greg, I got your questions. Let me know again if you need anything else. Which Cleveland receiver is worth keeping rest of the season? I mean, well, Tillman. Tillman would be the number one option. He had 8 targets this past week. He only turned it into 3 catches, but the target share is there. I would say Tillman, and then, Judy, I believe, has been slightly outperforming Elijah Moore on a week-to-week basis recently, but I'm going to have to check myself on that one. Past 4 weeks, he went nuclear this past week against the Saints. They were on their bye week 10. And then 11 targets week 9, 8 targets week 8. He cleared 70 yards receiving in both. He's cleared 5 catches in his past 3 games. This is all since Amari Cooper got traded, of course. So Judy's cleared 70 yards receiving 3 straight weeks. He's cleared 5 catches 3 straight weeks, and he went nuts this past week in a great matchup against the Saints. Elijah Moore, on the other hand, is not a full-time player for them. Judy and Tillman are the starters, and I like Elijah Moore, but he's a little more volatile. 6 for 66 and a touchdown this past week is great, but week 9 against the Chargers, he had 9 targets, which is good, but 3 catches for 28 yards. He had 12 targets week 8, 8 catches, 85 yards. The volume is there. He's not on the field as much as Tillman and Judy, so I guess I would say Tillman 1, Judy 2, Elijah Moore 3. All are intriguing, though, because Jameis Winston is a YOLO ball hero. But I would put Tillman first. Even though he was the worst of the Browns receivers this week. I would still put him 1. He looks really good. On a per play basis, he looks really good. And he's getting double teamed on every play, which maybe doesn't help fantasy prospects, but it's a testament to what, the talent is there. So I'll say Tillman 1, Judy 2, Elijah Moore 3. Let's see. I got my member questions. Greg, Fortune, MVM. Appreciate you guys. Fortune with the big super. Appreciate you very much, man. Coming, winding down to the end of the chat here. So I got a couple more questions, but I will hang around if anybody needs anything else. Again, one more time for anybody joining late. This is likely my only stream of the week this week. I am hosting family from out of town. So my availability will be a little sporadic. Apologies in advance. I will be available if you leave a comment. If you have any questions, if you leave it in the form of a comment on any videos or streams on the channel, I'll get to it as soon as I can. And I'll be full go for week 13 with just a couple of weeks to go before the fantasy playoffs. But just as an FYI, my availability for the rest of this week will be a little sporadic. But we'll answer questions where and when I can. Yep. Yeah. If you can bring yourself to do it, and I know it might look crazy to drop Patrick Mahomes, but he's a QB2. He's not a hold in 1 quarterback leagues. Like, that's where we're at. He has 2 QB1 weeks this year out of 10. Yes, they've come in the past 3 weeks, but still, he's hard to trust. He's a QB2. So yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And then this was the Achan Jacobs, Devontae Smith, McBride. I'm just reminding myself what the question was. Oh, that's right. Dobbins, Dell, and Darnold for Puka and Geno, or Lamb and Pollard. I mean, need to highlight this trade question again before I lose it. Achane, Jacobs, Devontae Smith, and McBride. You could deal Dobbins, Dell, and Darnold for either Puka and Geno or Lamb and Pollard. I kind of like the Lamb and Pollard acquisition a little bit more because you would be getting a running back in return. Lamb is obviously volatile because the Cowboys season is in the toilet. Puka is probably a little bit safer in that regard. I just don't like not getting a running back as much. Lamb and Pollard, I guess. Yeah, I would do Lamb and Pollard. Just know that there's a little bit of volatility with Lamb, obviously, with the Cowboys season spiraling out. But he's healthy, so I figure he should still continue to suit up each week. So, yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with the Lamb trade. Let's see. We are family. Hey, remember for 2 months. Appreciate you. Appreciate the support. Let me get to this now. And appreciate your patience. Dynasty question. Would I deal two like 2025 and 2026, like one each, 2 late firsts, Lawrence and Tank for Hurts and Mike Evans? It's a hell of a trade. So a couple things here. Are you a contender? I assume you are because you'd be acquiring Mike Evans, who's an older wide receiver coming off of an injury. I like Tank Dell a lot. It's Tank Dell, right? Not Tank Bigsby. So going from Dell to Evans gets you become a lot older at wide receiver, right? But if you win a championship, then you're not going to care. You're a contender, but you fell to 6th. Okay. So this would be an aggressive move to basically try to get back to the top of the standings with a couple of weeks still to play. You have Allen and Darnold. So you would have Allen and Hurts as your 2 quarterbacks, conceivably for the next 5 years. And you would go from Tank Dell to Mike Evans. So you would be sacrificing some longevity for a shorter window, at least at wide receiver. And you would be giving up 2 late round picks over the next 2 years. And this quarterback class coming up is not it's not projected to be a good one. I do think Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe can all be good, viable fantasy quarterbacks in the future. But if it's a late first in 2025, you're probably not going to have a chance to draft any one of those guys anyway. And you'd be going from Lawrence to Hurts, which would be a huge upgrade. And I think they're both the same age, right? So nothing lost there. It's an aggressive play. It's an aggressive trade. You don't need Singletary. What's the latest diagnosis on Mike Evans? I think he practiced today. So that's a great sign. Even if he doesn't play this week, it's a great sign for his short-term availability and ultimate, return sooner than later. If you are, so you're in 6th place. So I don't know if that means you're maybe you're 7-4 and you've scored a lot of the points, but there's other teams ahead of you. I would say, here's what I would do. Check, and maybe you already know this. Maybe you already are familiar with it. But go through the rosters of the other contenders in your league. Go up and down the list. From 1st to 5th, or anybody ahead of you, go through their rosters and have an honest conversation with yourself about where does my team stack up against them? If you truly believe, like heart of hearts, brain of brains, all that stuff, like, yeah, there's 3 teams ahead of me in the standings, but my team is better. If you believe that, like I am I'm 6th in standings now, but I know my team is top 3. I know it. And making this move would catapult me like firmly into that conversation and maybe closer to top 1 or 2 in the league. If that's the case, then I would do the trade. If you can, I'm sure it's competitive and you're probably, it's like, I don't know if that exercise is going to be helpful because if I do it, I'm going to look at these rosters and think to myself, they're all good. But so is your team. If you say, if I make this trade after the fact, now I have Allen and I have Hurts and now I have Mike Evans instead of Tank Dell, my starting lineup is better than everybody else's after I make this move, or at least it's better than 4 or 5 other teams, and I'm now top 2 or 3 at worst. If this trade firmly in your mind and your heart, if this trade firmly puts you in the top 3, then do it. If you don't think it does, if you think even after this trade, and again, sometimes we have to have these honest conversations with ourselves. It's easy to look at our own team and think, my team's awesome. My team is good. My team can beat anybody. And of course we want to think that. We want to feel that way. But sometimes the best thing we can do is take a step back and just have an honest, conversation with ourselves about like, where do I stack up against the rest of the teams in my league? If after this trade, you put Hurts in your super flex spot, you put Allen in your quarterback spot, you put Mike Evans in as one of your wide receivers, you look at your roster and you say to yourself, yup, I'm top 2 or 3, then do it. But if after this trade you're looking at it and I'm like, damn, I'm still behind 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 other lineups, then I'm less bullish on it. If you make this trade, you could beat anyone. You have Henry, you have Connor, you have Gubbs. Do the deal. Like that to me like that. Yeah, do the deal. Gibbs, you have Connor, you have Henry. You'd be adding Allen and Hurts. Do the trade. Again, it comes down to what you believe in. And obviously, we always all want to believe in our own teams. But if you can sit there after the trade and tell yourself, this is a top 2 squad, or at worst, it's a top 3 squad, do the trade. Because at the end of the day, we're playing for a championship. This helps you get a championship. The thing that you want to avoid is making a move like this and still feeling like you're a couple of pieces away. But if you don't think that's going to be the case after making this trade, then do the trade. I would do the trade. Yeah. It's like I can beat anybody after I make this move. My roster is loaded. I have 2 of the top 3 or 4 fantasy quarterbacks any given week in my starting lineup, plus a loaded collection of running backs and a good group of wide receivers. I would do the deal. Because at the end of the day, we're playing for chips. We're playing for titles. And if I have a top 2 or 3 roster, that's all I can ask for. That's all I can do is build a top 2 or 3 roster. I would say do the deal. I would say do the trade. Because not only now do you have 2 top 5 quarterbacks, you have 2, you maintain an excellent collection of running backs, and you have, you add another wide receiver 1. I say do the deal. I say do it. I'm in on that. I would do it. Yeah, I mean, if you can upgrade from Dalton Kincaid, I would, because he's not reliable right now. If you can upgrade from Kincaid, I would. If you can find a way to make that happen, if you can add Kittle to the mix, Andrews is intriguing as well, but he's a tier below. Like Kittle's a bona fide top 3 or 4 tight end rest of season. Bowers, Kittle, Kelsey. Nobody's going to be able to trade for Bowers. He's going to cost way too much. But if you can get Kittle, it's going to cost more, I would assume. Unless if you can just throw Kincaid in the trade and get Kittle in return, then all the more reason to say yes. If you add Kincaid and you get Kittle in return, yes. Do this trade. Load up your starting lineup with studs and go win the chip. Yes. Do that trade. I 100% would add Kincaid to this trade. I would get Kittle in return, and I would go win the damn chip. Yes. 100%. 100%. Now I'm all the way in. Now it's like smash accept. Now I'm all the way in. Hell yeah. If you love a player, if you believe in a player, you remain, firm in your belief that a player is going to work out, and it gives you some pause. I understand. Stay true to what you believe in. But Kincaid doesn't feel like a top 7 or 8 dynasty tight end right now. Maybe he's top 5 or 6, but I'd rather have Bowers. I'd rather have Kittle, even though he's older. For a championship team, I'd rather have Kelsey. Now, obviously, for the long haul, I'd rather have Kincaid. I'd rather have McBride. Damn, I might rather have Cade Otton right now. And then it's like, I guess he's in like the Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts conversation where it's like he's up and down, but you still believe because he's a talented young player. He's more in that range. If you love a player and you don't want to give him up, okay, then stay true to your plan, your formula, whatever it is that has worked for you to this point. But if I'm playing for a championship this year, and I know it's dynasty, so you have to factor in all of the years, not just this year. But if you're playing for a championship, then the focus has to be this year. And for this year, I'd rather have Kittle than Kincaid. I'd rather have Kittle than Kincaid for this year. And you could always try to get Kincaid back in the offseason. It might be difficult to pull. But I want to win a championship, and I think George Kittle helps me do that more than Kincaid does in 2024. Yeah. So at that point, it comes to, head versus heart. And Kincaid still could turn out to be a really good player down the line long term, but right now he's difficult to rely on. Right now he's difficult to trust. That could change, but I have no trust issues with George Kittle outside of the occasional injury, which is an issue for him at this point. But when he's on the field, he's a top 3 tight end. He will help you win a championship this year. Yep. Let me know if you need anything else. But appreciate the membership for 2 months. We are family. Appreciate it. Let me know if you need anything else. Best of luck. Let me know if that trade goes through. And if it does, we will congratulate you for what looks like a top probably 1 or 2 roster in your league. Waiver wire priority. Disley, Bourne, or who's that last name? I don't even know. I mean, I would prefer Disley, especially if you need a tight end. And Justin Herbert is killing it. Kendrick Bourne caught a touchdown this past week. 5 catches, 70 yards, 1 touchdown. It was a huge week for Kendrick Bourne. It was also the first time this year that he cleared 40 yards receiving. Sorry, he cleared 40. He had 41 in week 9. I mean, And I know, whatever, you could take it with a grain of salt. The Patriots offense was not good with Jacoby Brissett, and Drake May has elevated it. But Kendrick Bourne just hasn't. I mean, he had a nice week against the Rams. This very next week coming up, they have the Dolphins. The Dolphins have like one of the best secondaries in the league. I don't expect the Patriots wide receivers to do anything this coming week. The Chargers get the Ravens, and they can't stop anybody through the air. So Disley is the priority. Oh, the 10 Westbrook Akine. Okay. We should just call him 9 now. Nick Westbrook Akine. He's now 9. I'm just going to call him 9. He should change his name to 9, or change his number to 9. Disley, I think. Unless, I mean, if you're hurting pretty bad at wide receiver, then Westbrook Akine deserves some love as a bench stash. But I would probably say Disley. I think the Chargers have their way with the Ravens secondary because everybody has killed the Ravens secondary this year. Bourne, we can wait on. They get the Dolphins. The Patriots do this week. The Dolphins have a good secondary. Like one of the top in the league. So if you really need wide receiver help, Westbrook Akine, but otherwise Disley. Dude's coming on strong as like a low end tight end 1 rest of season. And then what I do, Dobbins for DK straight up. This is where you have Achane, you have Jacobs. I'm always a little leery of trading running back depth without getting any in return. I do think Metcalf is a top 10 wide receiver rest of season. I guess I don't know that Dobbins is a top 10 running back rest of season with the return of Gus Edwards and with the team, airing it out and throwing it a little bit more. Dobbins is probably in that like 16, 17, 18 range whereas I do think Metcalf can be more of like a strong wide receiver 1 rest of season. Seven catches, 70 yards this past week. The Seahawks are now past their bye week. They get Arizona. They get the Jets. They get Arizona again. They get the Packers. They get the Vikings. They get the Bears week 17 on the road. That is less than ideal. Championship week, that's a little less than ideal. And that week 13 match against the Jets could be a little volatile. But 2 games against Arizona and then home games against the Packers and Vikings, that looks pretty damn good for DK Metcalf. As for Dobbins, he gets Baltimore this week. That's not ideal. Atlanta on the road, not bad. Kansas City on the road, bad matchup. Tampa Bay at home, great matchup. Denver at home, not as good of a matchup. And then week 17 on the road in New England, that is a good matchup. So I count I count 1 or 2 more dicey matchups for Dobbins rest of season than Metcalf. So as long as you've got good running back depth behind Achane and Jacobs, I don't know if you have anybody else. Again, just keep in mind, obviously, if anything happens to Achane or Jacobs and you trade Dobbins, then are you grasping at straws at the running back position, which is not something that we want to have going into the fantasy playoffs. Stashed Cam Akers. I mean, he's a stash. He's a little bit more enticing if I have Aaron Jones. But he's not a guy that you're going to be able to rely on if anything if you trade Dobbins and then something, obviously knock on wood, we never root for anything bad to happen, but if you trade Dobbins and something happens to Achane or Jacobs, we can't rely on Cam Akers, right? That's not a viable replacement. You know what I mean? So while in a vacuum, I do think I would slightly prefer DK Metcalf. I would look at expanding this trade and getting a depth running back in return and including a depth wide receiver to send back to your trade partner. I would try to expand this and get a running back. I would try to, if you want to do this deal, I am fine in a vacuum getting Metcalf for Dobbins, but I would want a more reliable depth running back in return. And in exchange, I'll give my trade partner a depth wide receiver. So if you can expand that trade, get a depth running back in return, then I'm more in. Then I'm more interested. And you're getting the Pollard Lamb. I'm good with that. I'm good with the Pollard Lamb deal because you're getting running back depth in return for running back depth. So I'm good with that. I like that. Okay, we are at the end of the chat. I'll give it a couple of more minutes in case anybody needs anything else. But if not, I want to thank everybody for spending some time and coming in and hanging out tonight. Special shout out to my members. I saw Greg. I saw Arturo. I saw David. I saw He Hate Me. I saw MVM. Who else did I see? I saw Fortune. Let's see. I'm just going down the list. I saw Fortune, and then We Are Family popped in, and we're going to make We Are Family one of the elite dynasty squads in that league. We're going to win a championship. That's the plan. And, of course, everybody else. Special shout-out to the supers. Jose, thank you for the super. Fortune, very kind of you to be a member and also send a super. That is not necessary, but very kind of you to do that. Appreciate it. And, of course, everybody for coming in, engaging with the stream. Hopefully the conversation was fun and helpful for everybody. Appreciate everybody, as always, taking the time out of your evening to spend some time with me. We got week 12 coming up. The fantasy playoffs are coming into view. So again, if you're in playoff position, start molding that roster to be ready for the fantasy playoffs. Acquire your running back handcuffs, however, by any means necessary, as long as they are even remotely relevant. Acquire your running back handcuffs. Take a look at quarterback schedules like a Patrick Mahomes. I hate his playoff schedule, and he's not a QB1 in one quarterback leagues anyway. Whereas there are other guys that are a little bit more intriguing. The Arizona Cardinals, the Atlanta Falcons, I think the New York Jets as well, as long as they don't completely fall apart, which they could. Look at the positive playoff schedules. I looked at, what was the source? Fantasy playoff schedules 2024. I'm going to give you guys a link. It's called spikeweek.com. This is a cheat sheet. For anybody who wants to look at the fantasy playoff schedule on a by team basis. Go ahead and I'm posting it in the chat right now. That link will show you week 15, 16, and 17 matchups for every team. And then you can, from there, take a look at where are the favorable matchups. Again, Arizona looks like a really, really good one. That'll give you the matchups, the upcoming matchups that potentially work with to mold your roster to get ready for the fantasy playoffs. If you are in good shape, of course, to make the playoffs, the time is now to start getting your roster ready. If you're still on the outside looking in, if you haven't clinched a playoff spot, maybe you're in that 5, 6, 7, 8 range, you're still in it, but you haven't clinched anything yet. We're still working on a 1 week at a time basis, so this maybe doesn't apply to you yet. However, if you feel like you're in good shape to make the playoffs, that's a good tool to have. It's a good metric to have to just keep an eye on, keep tabs for the fantasy playoffs, and sort out where the best matchups might be. But if there is nothing else, I think that might do it for me tonight. Thank you guys, as always. Again, one more time, and I'll put a community post on the YouTube channel as well. But this will likely be my final stream of the week. Spending some time with family who are traveling in from out of town. So I'm going to be a little less available for the rest of this week, just this week, than I normally am. But Feel free to leave any questions you may have in the form of a comment, either on the post that I share or any videos or streams on the channel. And I'll be sure to get to it as quickly as I can. And if there's nothing else, obviously everybody best of luck week 12. If I don't see you or if hear from you between now and then, I will definitely be back full slate of streams week 13. And again, I will make myself available as much as I possibly can this week. I just don't know what I can specifically commit to ahead of the weekend. But I will be back full force week 13, ready to go. And if you leave questions in the form of comments on any videos or streams, I will see it eventually, and I will do my best to get to them in a timely manner. But that'll do it for me tonight. Thank you guys as always. Enjoy your Tuesday evening. Best of luck with waivers. Best of luck with your matchups. And I will see you guys most likely at the start of next week, but I will be around. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.